Today I threw away my pills against my family doctor's will. They said they would make me smile, but instead I feel nothing.
Hello, I'm Pete Dichter with this edition of Impact North America from Rome, our studios in Rome. And today, pleased to have Father Paul Kramer on board with us. And Father is an acclaimed author, written several books on the mission of Fatima, on Masonry. Also, 3 degrees in theology, in philosophy, and a Master of Divinity. Thank you so much for taking time, Father, and coming to talk with us today.
Well, it's great to be here, Peter.
How do they infiltrate? I mean, obviously they must be within the Vatican walls. How do they infiltrate the church?
They cultivate relationships with young prelates and young priests who are, when they're hired to work in the Vatican, or even before they're hired to work in the Vatican, when they see that a man is destined for high places in the church, they begin already to cultivate relationships with these men. They introduce them to people who are the movers and shakers. They take them to diplomatic cocktail parties and gatherings. They give them money so that they can have an ample bank account, and they promote their career among others that, in the church hierarchy with whom they have influence. And in this manner, they're able to promote the careers of these men. And at a certain point, they will be invited to join Freemasonry, where they will, they can rise to the top. They can move to very high positions. Or else, if at that point the man declines and he doesn't want to become a Mason, then no more money, no more connections with powerful people. You're going to be simply reverting back to what you were when you first met these people, and your career is not going to move forward unless without an act of God.
So this has been a very patient and conscious movement. I'm curious as to why somebody who's being brought through the seminary as a young priest isn't aware of Masonry and isn't aware of what's happening to him.
These are secret societies, and they don't advertise their agenda that much. The devil likes to be secretive, and so do his followers. So you have, for example, already in the 1820s, the Masonic association called the Alta Vendita, I think that's what they called themselves, and they reported to their leader that their propagandizing the clergy was fantastically successful in planting the Masonic ideas into the minds of the young clergy. And their agenda was, let them think that they're marching under the standards of the keys of Peter, whereas in fact they will be marching under our standards. And St. Maximilian Kolbe in 1917, on the second centenary celebration of Freemasonry, he saw them in their parade in Rome with placards saying, "Satan will rule from the Vatican. The Pope will be his slave." And this brings us back to that struggle that the Pope has, that struggle against Freemasonry. Freemasonry attempts to dominate the Pope, coerce the Pope, enslave the Pope into making their policies become the official policies of the Church.
And what I'm going to be doing here is I'm pretty much going to be giving voice to the material that's in my little booklet, but it's called The Permanent Instruction of the Alta Vendita, and it's a booklet that was published by TAN this past spring. And the booklet is a short expose of a Masonic document written in the early 19th century that mapped out a blueprint for the subversion of the Catholic Church. Now, the Alta Vendita was the highest lodge of the Carbonari, which was an Italian secret society that had links to Freemasonry. In fact, according to the Jesuit Father Cahill, who would chronicle these things, the Alta Vendita was commonly supposed to have been at the time the governing center of European Freemasonry, and the Carbonari were most active in Italy and in France. Now, Bishop Rudolf Graber, in this book here, Athanasius and the Church of Our Time, in here he quotes a Freemason who openly declared, he said, the goal of Freemasonry is no longer the destruction of the church, but to make use of it by infiltrating it. So the permanent instruction of the Alta Vendita is an amazing document in many ways, especially because from the start, the document tells of a process that's going to take decades to accomplish. This means that those men who drew up the document, they knew that they would not live to see its fulfillment. They were inaugurating a work that would be carried on by succeeding generations of their followers. The secret papers of the Alta Vendita fell in the hands of Pope Gregory XVI, who reigned between 1831 and 1846, and the papers embrace a period that go from 1820 to 1846. Later on, as I said earlier, at the request of Venerable Pope Pius IX, they were published by Credunt Joly in a book called The Roman Church and the Revolution. Now, Venerable Pope Pius IX himself guaranteed the authenticity of these documents in a brief approbation which he addressed to the author on February 25, 1861. The full text of the Alta Vendita is also available in English, the entire thing, in this book here, Grand Orient Freemasonry Unmasked, by Monsignor George Dillon. It's printed by Omni Publications. It has an introduction by Father Fahey, but it was originally printed last century. And when Pope Leo XIII was presented with a copy of this book, of Monsignor Dillon's book, back in the late 1800s, Pope Leo was so impressed that he'd ordered an Italian version of this book to be published at his own expense. Now here, Pope Leo XIII was only being true to his great anti-Freemasonry encyclical, Humanum Genus, where in that encyclical he called upon Catholic leaders to, and this is a quote from him, to tear off the mask of Freemasonry and make plain to all what it really is. So the publication of these documents is a means of tearing off the mask. Now, I'm going to read a section from the Alta Vendita. This is the section from the Alta Vendita. Quote, "The Pope, whoever he is, will never come to the secret societies. It is up to the secret societies to take the first step toward the Church with the aim of conquering both of them. The task we are going to undertake is not the work of a day, or of a month, or of a year. It may last several years, perhaps a century, but in our ranks the soldier dies and the struggle goes on. We do not intend to win the popes to our cause, to make them neophytes of our principles, propagators of our ideas. That would be a ridiculous dream. Here, of course, they're talking about Gregory XVI, Pius IX, Leo XIII. They're not going to try and win these men over to Masonic ideas. They're going to leave them alone. We do not intend to make them neophytes of our principles, propagators of our ideas. That would be a ridiculous dream. And if events turn out in some way, if cardinals or prelates, for example, of their own free will or by surprise, should enter into a part of our secrets, this is not an incentive for desiring their elevation to the See of Peter. That elevation would ruin us. Ambition alone would have led them to apostasy. The requirements of power would force them to sacrifice us. What we must ask for and what we should look for as the Jews wait for the Messiah is a pope according to our needs. With that, we shall march more securely toward the assault on the Church than with the pamphlets of our brethren in France and even the gold of England. Do you want to know the reason for this? It is that with this, in order to shatter the high rock on which God has built his church, they know who they're fighting against. In order to shatter the high rock on which God has built his church, we no longer need Hannibalian vinegar, or need gunpowder, or need our arms. We have the little finger of the successor of Peter engaged in the ploy, and this little finger is as good for this crusade as all the Urban IIs and all the St. Bernards in Christendom. We have no doubt that we will arrive at the supreme end of our efforts. But when? But how? The unknown is not yet revealed. Now, then, to assure ourselves a pope of the required dimensions, it is a question first of shaping for this pope a generation worthy of the reign that we are dreaming of. Leave the old people and those of the mature age aside. Go to the youth, and if possible, even to the children. You will contrive for yourself at little cost a reputation as good Catholics and pure patriots. This is pure subversion. Document goes on. This reputation will put access to our doctrine into the midst of the young clergy, as well as deeply into the monasteries. In a few years, by the force of things, this young clergy will have overrun all the functions. They will form the sovereign councils. They will be called to choose a pontiff who should reign. And this pontiff, like most of his contemporaries, will be more or less imbued with the humanitarian principles that we are going to begin to put into circulation. It is a small grain of black mustard that we are entrusting to the ground, but the sunshine of justice will develop it to the highest power, and you will see one day what a rich harvest this small seed will produce. In the path that we are laying out for our brethren, there are found great obstacles to conquer, difficulties of more than one kind to master. They will triumph over them by experience and by clear-sightedness. But the goal is so splendid that it is important to put all the sails to the wind in order to reach it. You want to revolutionize Italy? Look for the Pope whose portrait we have just drawn. You wish to establish the reign of the chosen one on the throne of the prostitute of Babylon? Let the clergy march under your standard, always believing they are marching under the banner of the apostolic keys.
Obviously, the control of the Masons in the Vatican is pretty extreme, and I guess they would even have in controlling cardinals, they would have control in elections as well, correct?
The government of the church, I can only tell you this much. I'll give you a quotation to show you just how pervasive is their power in the Vatican. Whereas Monsignor Mario Marini told me in 2008, he said, our hands are tied, and he makes this gesture. Our hands are tied. We can do nothing because it is Freemasons who control the key positions in the Vatican. Okay. And then a few months before he died, in 2008, October 2008, he died in May of 2009, Marini told me again, we are under Masonic occupation.